when you pick up a pound in Northern California, by the time you get it down to Southern California, it's lost a bunch of weight because we were talking about the difference between a city pound and a country pound.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, yeah, as soon as we get a hold of it, we just spray it all down with water anyways. I go, yeah, I know. And it's just like, come on, do you have to rub it in my face, in my house? Really? And it's just, I look over at my mom and she's just like, God, neither one of us can keep our mouths shut. That's the problem, right? Like he can't help it because me and her have had the argument before. There's no good cops versus, oh, of course there are. And it's like, hey, he's telling you right now in his own fucking words what they do. They lie, they cheat, and they will do anything to get you thrown in jail for as long as they possibly can. Doesn't matter if you grew up next door to them and you went to school together. They don't care. And then they all knew it was going to be legal at some point, and they all did it anyways.
Yep.
And now they're sitting up here in Idaho on a nice, big, fat retirement.
Yeah, it's just like when Kamala laughed about putting people in prison for weed.
Same thing.
Yep.
Yeah, we just spray it all down with water. No big deal. Go to jail, you loser. What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio. Transmitting from the future-free state of Greater Idaho, I am the one-armed madman. And from Music City, America, Daniel Steele's here with us in the house. What's up, man?
Happening, everybody? Good. I think I figured out how to end the war in Gaza.
Ooh, I'm interested.
Raise the price.
The price of?
Palestine. If you're giving it away for free, who can pass up on a good deal?
That's a good point. That's a good point. I
only
heard
0.02% Ashkenazi, and I'd take me some free Palestine, but if you want to charge me for it, there's no shot I'd pay.
No shit, right? Like I heard something interesting the other day, and it was just like on a news report. And they were like, yeah, well, Israel won't let that go into Gaza right now. And it's like, Israel will not let that go into. So they can't even like argue that they're their own territory or their own country because like you can't even get journalists in there because Israel won't allow it. And it's like, how can you not look at this as anything other than a prison, right? Like if me and you wanted to get into like the prison industrial complex and podcast about prisons, we would have a really hard time getting into prisons to like with a camera to take a look at what's going on. And I think that's exactly what's going on there.
Yeah, didn't that in Yahoo, like there was a article that was released before October 7th where he's like, no, we need to keep giving them money because we need them to attack us so that we can maintain the status quo or something like that.
Yeah, that's been his whole plan was the Likud
and
party.
That's not even like some deep-rooted, oh gosh, didn't happen. No, it was like on the front page of the Israeli Times.
Yeah. It was like, it's the same thing that we've done, like what we did with like, the Taliban and shit like that in Afghanistan. We trained them up and, made them do their purpose. That's the exact same thing that Israel is doing with Hamas. They just want it to make it impossible for a two-state solution.
Yeah. And I say, let's start the Crusades.
Why not? I'm ready. I'm ready for some Crusades. Like, I hope that our new, like we were talking on text the other night, like I hope our new, whoever's dealing with the Middle East is just horribly racist and hates them with a passion. Like, that's not me. I was married to a Muslim at one point. Like, doesn't bother me at all. But at this point, like, I would rather have some Muslim-hating fucking hardcore, right-winger than some, they're so great, we just need to bring them in. I go that way.
That's a better stance, I guess. But, I mean, it's Rubio. It's just like we're going to just continue to fund both sides.
Probably. I love that meme where it's like Israel and Gaza and you see missiles going and it says our tax dollars and then the missiles are like going all crazy and somehow also our tax dollars. Oh, shit. Well, we watched a pretty interesting, I sent you a video last night from this this new company that's making a micro-nuclear reactor. What did you think about that? I've got some clips if you want to watch some of them.
Yeah, let's do that. It was super interesting.
I thought so. And like, this is something that I've been interested in a really long time. So anytime I see somebody that's trying to make a small reactor, like I go in on it as hard as I can. I've got a couple other clips that we'll listen to also. These are all really short clips, so it's not going to take a long time. But I've got another couple clips from another guy who's making a micro reactor too. So we'll see if they've got kind of the same take on it. But to lead us in to these clips, I wanted to play this clip here that has been going viral on X for the past couple days from a new show that I was instructed that I should watch called Landman with Billy Bob Thornton. So let's listen to this.
Diesel they have to burn to mix that much concrete
Oh, I
or
should
make that
probably
steel and haul this shit out here.
I should
and put it
probably
together
preface
with-
this because you have not seen it. Billy Bob is bringing some liberal woman out to a wind farm in Texas. So he's talking about windmills, essentially.
Any idea how much diesel they have to burn to mix that much concrete or make that steel and haul this shit out here and put it together with a 450-foot crane? You want to guess how much oil it takes to lubricate that fucking thing or winterize it? And its 20-year lifespan, it won't offset the carbon footprint of making it. And don't get me started on solar panels and the lithium in your Tesla battery.
In your Tesla battery.
Yeah.
And never mind the fact that if the whole world decided to go electric tomorrow, we don't have the transmission lines to get the electricity to the cities.
This is my point
It'd
for
take
years
30
now.
years if we started tomorrow.
Not even, way longer.
And unfortunately for your grandkids, we have a 120-year petroleum-based infrastructure. Our whole lives depend on it. And hell, it's in everything. That road we came in on, the wheels on every car ever made, including yours, it's in tennis rackets and lipstick and refrigerators and antihistamines, pretty much anything plastic. Your cell phone case, artificial heart valves, any kind of clothing that's not made with animal or plant fibers.
This woman is just
soap,
coping and
fucking
seething
hand
right now. She
lotion,
can't stand
garbage
it.
bags, fishing boats, you name it. Every fucking thing. And you know what the kicker is? We're gonna run out of it before we find its replacement.
It's the thing that's gonna kill us all. As a species.
No, the thing that's gonna kill us all is running out before we find an alternative. And believe me, if Exxon thought them fucking things right there were the future, they'd be putting them all over the goddamn place. Getting oil out of the ground is the most dangerous job in the world. We don't do it because we like it. We do it because we run out of options. And you're out here trying to find something to blame for the danger besides your boss. There ain't nobody to blame but the demand that we keep pumping it.
God damn, that was good. I don't know how this got on TV.
That I don't know, but I was having one of my nightly conversations with Chat Jeebus the other night, and I'm just gonna walk through some of the questions.
Sure. And then I want to kind of get my take on this too. So go ahead.
I said, how many tons of ice are there in the polar ice caps? So it turns out to be 30 to 50 trillion tons. Okay. How many tons are melting each day? 420 billion tons annually. So there's 30 to 50 trillion tons of ice.
Yeah.
And we're it's melting 420 billion tons annually. How long would it take for the ice caps to melt? Goes through a long math conversion. 69,900 years.
Yeah, that's
Further,
and you know what else? You probably, and maybe you should ask it this at some point, how much new ice is created annually? Because I would imagine that there is new ice created in some regions where in others it's probably lost. You know, there's a massive, the biggest current in the world on the globe is the Arctic. I don't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like the Arctic current. And it basically just circles around Antarctica. And just keeps everything cold.
Let's get through the rest of this.
Yeah, go ahead. Keep going.
I said, over the last 10 years, how much has the U.S. added to their carbon output? And the U.S. has actually declined, and we're like really going down towards zero.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, who are the culprits here? They're like, well, you can't really call India and China culprits.
Yeah.
Or it's like India, China, and freight. I said, well, what would be the solution to that? And they basically said tariffs. So
Unbelievable.
when the tariffs become a thing, my argument's going to be we want to cure global warming, right? Because freight coming across from China in India is way more carbon output than we do here in America.
Yeah.
We have these new standards of making things, which will keep our carbon output low. So why are you complaining about tariffs now?
That's unbelievable. I saw a really funny clip from ChatGPT earlier today on Twitter where it asked how many Jews were in Europe before World War II, and it was like 6 million. And then it goes, how many after? And they're like 12 million. And he goes, do you realize why you're retarded?
That's
it was
Photoshop.
funny. You know, it was just a throwaway. But anyways,
I went and asked ChatGPT and I asked Grok, and they both gave me like a 6 million decline.
Okay, cool. Anyways, so
I was hopeful.
A couple of the things that he brought up in that were really great. So when he talks about how that thing won't produce enough energy in its lifetime to, pay for itself, essentially, the reason these things go bad so quick, and I don't know why I didn't think of this on my own, but I saw this in a video a couple months ago. Those big rotors, they spin at like, 20 RPMs, maybe 30 if the wind's really kicking. But the output has to be at like 1,800 RPMs in order to generate electricity. So in order to go from 20 to 1,800, you need a massive fucking gearbox. Just a massive gearbox. And you're putting so much torque into this fucking thing that they're just stripping gears like crazy. And there's really no way to get around that. It's just, gearboxes are only going to go as far as they possibly can. And we're pushing them further than they can go in this case.
Have you driven through like eastern New Mexico, West Texas? And I guess I drove through North Dakota last year. It's such a fucking eyesore, especially in the flatlands where there's nothing. All you can see is windmills.
Yeah.
And the ones in the ocean are like really fucking with the patterns for whales.
Whales. Yep. I want to be a whale psychologist. So these are like between 2 and 4 megawatt windmills, which will be important later. Another big thing that he brought up was the transmission line issue. And when I first started looking at climate change, this was my avenue because I built power lines. Like, I understand transmission lines better than these idiots who are screaming about climate change. And my initial thought was there's no way we can build this in a meaningful amount of time. So I started looking into like their actual projections and what they wanted to do. So all of this data that I'm going to read right now comes from whitehouse.gov. This is all Biden's administration put this out themselves, ridiculous, but here it is. So 2030 goals, they want to eliminate 6 billion tons of CO2, reduced by 50% in 2030. That's 5 billion tons a day. So just an enormous amount of CO2 that they want to get rid of. The 2030 goals were to increase the transmission grid by 60% or 420,000 miles. That is the equivalent of 155 times across America with transmission lines, or 16.8 times around the entire world. 8 billion pounds per conductor. I-5, you've driven down I-5 before and you've seen that massive transmission line. So those are running bundle conductors. You're running 8 bundles of wire. You've got 100 tons per tower every 900 to 1,500 feet. The wire is 3 pounds per foot, and you're talking about 8 bundles. So that's 24 conductors. So you immediately start to see that these mining numbers are ridiculous and just something that we cannot do. So by 2050, they want to do 1.26 million miles of new transmission lines. That is 452 times across America or 51.6 times around the world. Like, we live in a country where every kid who goes to high school, even if they're, come from a family of construction workers, are told to go to college. Go to college. We want to build these AIs. So we have a society that is pushing people away from construction, but is becoming more and more dependent on construction as our energy usage, our energy demands increase. So it's really crazy. So now we can get into some pricing here. New transmission line, 2 million to 6.5 million per mile. So that would be $378 trillion.
How much?
$378 trillion. It would cost us to do this.
What's our GDP?
Or I don't know, 2 trillion, something like that. So just absurdly impossible. And then you start getting into this. 70% of the nation's grid is more than 25 years above its average age of decommission. So 60% of our entire grid, or 3.3 million miles, have surpassed their 50-year lifespan expectancy. So we already have 3 million miles of lines that we need to replace, and they want to add another, a couple 100 million. It's just absurdly impossible. There's no way that we could build this. Like he said, even if we started today, 30 years, not even close. There's just no way. We would have to eliminate 50% of college students immediately and just put them straight into construction.
That's a good idea.
It is, but it's not going to happen anytime soon.
Wow. That's
something, right? When you start looking at the actual numbers, you go, oh, this is absurd. It's completely absurd. It's like, I don't know that I can even think of an example as absurd as that, right? Maybe saying that we're going to build a colony on Mars in the next 20 years. That would be just as absurd. A self-sustaining, colony or something like that of thousands of people. That would be absurd in 20 years from now. Elon would have to drop everything he's doing, put everything he had into SpaceX, and still you may not have the technology that you need.
So I mentioned this before, but this is a little different context. I became friends with the person who was head of nuclear for Clark County for 20 years. And the problem with nuclear is the problem that just we have as a country. So they pass these things. We have to be, cut 50% by 2030, but they'll be out of office before that's due. Mm-hmm. We don't have a plan. We just have these signals like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And then all the money gets fucking funneled off way before, like how many, $7.5 billion to build EV chargers, and we built 8.
Yeah.
But we put up 7.5 billion, like, oh, look at what we're doing, EV chargers.
Yep.
They cut Elon out of it. And then we have 8. Thanks, Mayor Pete.
Yeah, thanks. Good job.
He's busy chest feeding.
They just had the COP, I don't know, 28, I think it was, possibly. It doesn't matter what number it was. They're having these things way too often anyway. So they were coming to a number. They wanted a number that developed countries would have to pay every year to developing countries for climate change. And the number came to $300 million per year and they were pissed. Everybody was pissed. United States was pissed. A couple of the European countries were pissed. Everybody in Africa was pissed. They wanted $2 trillion a year. And we're going to make now we're going to make a plan to where we can go from 300 million to 2 trillion per year. So we'll just give up our entire GDP to Africa so they can, invest in climate change, AKA yachts and blow.
Fuck that.
Yeah, it's disgusting. And it's like, who gave these people the power to do this? And what does Donald Trump have to do on day one to get us out of it? I hope immediately he just goes, no more climate accords, no more COP, none of this stuff. We're out. And I hope this time he can put some stopgaps in place so the next incoming administration can't enter us directly right back into it again.
It was all looking so promising, but now it's just like, oh, this is going to be business as usual.
I think so. Yep. It was, what it reminded me of was, you remember when it was announced that Elon bought Twitter and everybody just kind of went nuts on Twitter and was tweeting, offensive shit like that? Nothing had changed. The old owners of Twitter still own Twitter, and they were still going to get rid of people for saying the wrong shit. But there was this, period of euphoria where everybody was so pumped. And in this case, it turned out to be, I think, better than I expected. So it's not the same, but that feeling of like, oh, we did it, we're free again type of thing. And it's probably going to be a rude awakening.
Well, when Elon hired that lady to be CEO, she came directly from WEF. And I'm like, oh, we're fucked. This isn't going to do anything now. And it's actually has done something.
It's been great.
Maybe I'm being a little pessimistic.
Me too. No, I'm same thing, man. I was very pessimistic with Twitter. I didn't think it was gonna change anything, and it's changed a lot. So,
Yeah.
all right. Speaking of changing everything, let's get into some of these clips. These guys are smart, man. These guys, I love seeing like young, smart dudes bet on themselves and just go all in on something that is like,
Yeah.
a massive gap in society that needs to be. Speaking of massive gaps in society that need to be filled, there are a lot of people dying of drug overdoses in this country every day. And wouldn't you know it, I've got the guy here on the line that can get you a substitute for these dangerous street drugs so you can have
Supplement
fun,
even. Yep.
get high, and wake up feeling refreshed. Go to Get Happy and put in Too Hard for the code and get yourself some drugs.
GETHVPPY. It's not HAPPY.
Yeah.
Get Happy, HVPPY.
Yeah.
Use the code Too Hard for 20% off your first order. If you order, we'll give you a shout out on the next one that I do, which will probably be shortly after Thanksgiving. And yeah.
And here we go.
You
Nuclear
can check
energy.
out from your family.
Yeah, get high and watch some videos on nuclear energy.
Trying to build a new reactor here, something that nobody's ever done before. A big part of our culture is to just iterate as quickly as possible. The only way to do that is to make a lot of reactors. That's sort of one of the big cornerstones of Radiant, is to make small reactors, things that we can actually make quickly and make a lot of, and progressively make the design a lot better.
Obviously, Radiant's developing Kaleidos, which is a portable nuclear reactor, which is meant to replace diesel gensets. But to me, it's actually just minimum viable product. We're building the smallest nuclear reactor because smaller is cheaper. It's super hard to do what we're doing right now, which is basically building our Falcon 1, but for a nuclear reactor. The reason why it's hard is because there's a ton of regulatory hurdle against it. And we don't get to do it multiple times. We have to build this thing and it's got to turn on. We have to go through a series of tests, and by the time we're done, we need to have demonstrated several key characteristics of the reactor. Simultaneously, that needs to align with our production unit, which is going to replace diesel generators. So that's the challenge. So I would say what Radiant is doing right now is actually developing the capability to design, produce, and build nuclear reactors.
So how happy do you think these guys were when Trump got into office, huh? The first thing he said when he was talking about how hard it was regulations. God, that's fucked up.
So when you said bet on themselves, do you want to know how much money they've raised?
No, yeah.
Or well, actually looking at their facility with the crane, with everything in there, guess how much that's cost them so far?
I would say they've probably put $5 million in.
So in November of this year, they closed a $100 million round, bringing their total funding up to $160 million.
Oh, wow. That's a lot more than I would have figured. Now that I think about it, it would cost way more than $5 million to do what they're doing. Like, it's just, yeah.
But if that was a government project, they'd be at $2 billion at least by now.
Oh, and also
they wouldn't have that fucking crane in the building.
Yeah, that's all they would have had done so far is get the crane into the building, right? They wouldn't have built
the crane and start erecting the building around it.
Yeah. You know what they would have done? They would have bought a bigger crane than they needed, and they go, you know what? We need a new building.
Yeah.
Because that's what government work does. Like, I think I've brought this up to you before, but in Northern California, where I grew up, there was a 4-lane highway going from San Francisco all the way to Northern California, and it took 20 years for them to widen 2 lanes. And it was just like, it ended up being, I think, 5 or 6 times the cost that it was supposed to be. Multiple different construction companies ended up doing it because you go in with a small bid and then you just keep jacking it up and keep jacking it up, and it's going to take longer. Oh, well, this, we need to do another environmental impact study, so that's going to cost another $2 million. And it just goes on and on and on.
Have you ever been to that olive place, right? So like you're heading north towards Reading, right before it goes from 4 lanes down to 2, one of the exits has this massive olive store.
I couldn't remember. I haven't been up that way in many years.
It's so fucking good. Like, I had friends that would go up and trim, and I went and visited one, and then I went back a second time, and half of the reason I went back the second time was to stop by that olive store and just pack the back of my Jeep full of shit. It was so delicious.
Hell yeah. I want an olive tree for my house, but they don't sell them around here.
Will they grow?
I think so. Like, ChatGPT says meh, and like, it's close, I think. Like, I don't know. Maybe if I, like, put it on my porch during the wintertime or something. But I get that. But then, it can only get so big if you do that. Anyways. All right, let's go for the next round here.
That's what we're working on. By 2028, we should be able to deliver one of these portable nuclear microreactors to a customer site and then ramp production as soon as possible up to 50 units a year. You can put up to 4 megawatts, that's 4 Kaleidos reactors, inside of this shielding box, which it's just prefabricated concrete. And you need that so that you can use about a tennis court of space for 4 megawatts of power. Just outside that fence is the NRC public dose limit. So you could have a sidewalk or a McDonald's or you name it right next to this.
Ah, that's so freaking cool, right?
And that's 2028.
Yeah.
Man, I hope Elon gets involved.
Right? They could shorten it up a couple years even. There was something that I wanted to. Oh, so 4 megawatts he was talking about.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Like, how much is that?
I was going to ask you because I have it right here. How much do you think you would need equivalent for wind or solar?
Oh no, just like could that power Nashville?
Oh no! This would power your business. This would power. This is a smaller reactor. So 4 megawatts is the same amount of power that windmill would put out.
Okay.
So given that, let's say that you're in an area that has wind all the time, so you're lucky and your business is in a spot that has a ton of wind. How much space do you think you would need to generate the equivalent amount of electricity out of wind and solar that you would get out of that tennis
10
court?
acres?
So it's you would need 2 to 4 of those turbines because they don't actually put out 4 megawatts, and those would need to be spaced out. Where does it say the spacing? Anyways, it would be a total of about 500 acres you would need for
500
wind.
acres.
500 acres. And that's if you were living in a spot that had wind. If there's not wind, then you're going to need a whole lot more. And if you don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have to run transmission lines, right? So for solar, you would need 16,000 to 27,000 square meters. So that'd be 4 to 7 acres. And wait, what was I just saying? I forgot. Oh yeah, so you would need your transmission line. So transmission is also very inefficient. It's our most efficient way to transmit electricity, but it's still only 33% efficient. So after 1,000 miles of transmission, so like these guys, their plan is to build a whole bunch of windmills and solar panels in Texas, and then run the lines to California and wherever else they need these fucking things. So after 1,000 miles, 9% of your energy is lost completely, and it costs an extra 19% power delivery. Wow. After 2,000 miles, it's 17% gets lost, and it costs an extra 42%. 3,000 miles is 26% lost at 71% extra, and after 4,000 miles, so if you want to go, under the ocean from wherever, it's going to be 35% lost, and it's going to cost you 107% extra.
Wow.
So these things are just, they're not usable. Like this whole wind and solar thing is really just a scam.
Have you ever driven by one of the big solar farms?
Uh-huh.
Fucking so driving from Vegas to LA, there's one.
Solar one. The mirror one with the tower.
Yeah. And it's just like blinding while you're driving by. And I guess when birds fly over them, they just combust.
Oh yeah, they turn to fucking
so
smoke.
Fucking hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and like how many Mexicans are you gonna employ to polish those mirrors?
None.
Yeah, not with Trump in office, right?
They have robots for that.
But there was
they do have robots for that.
Yeah, well, there was a big hailstorm in Texas recently that took out like fucking 200 acres or something like that of solar panels. Well, what are you gonna do? These things they're not all that they're cracked up to be. It's really interesting to me that like more people with a construction background haven't looked into this and just go, oh, this is ridiculous. Like we couldn't build this if we had to.
Who has a construction background? Everybody went to school for gender studies.
Yeah, exactly. Like when was the last time you heard somebody on Joe Rogan talk about construction?
Yeah.
You don't. Like nobody talks about
I guess.
it. Yeah, but he's really talking about like engineering, and it's not construction. Like he's doing robotic work and manufacturing. He's big into manufacturing, but that's still not construction. Like I'm not sure if Elon knows all of this stuff that we've been talking about, because if you're
Yeah,
not,
we're probably smarter than him.
well, I mean, I might know a
Kidding.
little bit more about power lines, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if I sat down with him and he knew more about power lines than me, just because he's weird and autistic and he's very smart.
He's the #1 Diablo 4 player in the world now.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Wow. You think somebody
I
else
heard
is
that,
playing
like,
for him?
I've never tried to play the game just because I've heard people talk about how fucking hard it is.
Oh, really?
He was like ranked 15th a couple weeks ago, and then he did something incredible, as Elon's do, and he's now ranked #1 in the world.
Wow. That's something.
From Mar-a-Lago.
What was
Like,
that?
he's just living at Mar-a-Lago right
Oh,
now.
is he really? Oh, that's cool. That's fucking
Yeah.
cool. He is really going for it. Do you think he's going to buy MSNBC?
Oh, fucking hope so.
That would be so cool.
Just put Rogan in the Madhouse spot. Let Alex Jones run from like noon to 6 p.m.
Oh, that'd be sick. Dude, Alex.
Or however long Alex Jones runs. Like, he goes long every day, right?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MSNBC. Today we're going to be talking about the deep state. And
Do you know what that would do to Bill Gates? He might grow some bigger tits.
he might have to get implants.
That guy's still talking about we have to kill the cows to save the world.
And planting trees is bad for climate change, apparently.
Yeah.
I haven't dug into what he's talking about on there. Like, I can't even steel man that argument.
No,
No,
it's
exactly.
ridiculous.
No, it's so stupid. You know that we've had, like, in the past, I think it's like 20 years or something like that. Maybe it's 30 years or a little longer. We've had greening around the world in the equivalents of like North America. So
Yeah.
a North America amount of trees have grown in the past 20 to 30 years.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. I just got a phone call. That was not good. Now I can't see anything on my screen. Hold on. Give me a second here. Oh, God. This is bad.
While he's looking
There
at
we
that,
go.
go
I'm
to
good.
ETHVPPY.com and use the code 2HARD. We'll give you a big shout out, and the person who buys the most in the next 3 months will have you on as a guest.
Oh, that'd be fun. That'd be fun. We can get some stories from you. That was a good filibuster. My other co-host, Nolan, does not know how to do that. I mess up something and I'm starting, and he's just sitting there quiet for 5-10 seconds. I go, thanks for the save, bud. Here's another video.
Decades. So in the 60s, we developed everything. Nuclear reactors were made for submarines. In the 70s, we started to deploy power reactors based off of those submarine reactors. In the 80s, we really had nuclear reach its peak scale in the US, but then we also had Chernobyl, a huge international disaster. And then in the 90s, we had a turnaround where states banned nuclear. I think throughout all this, there was this growing environmental outrage and concern, and then climate change, and then eventually an acceptance of climate change. And I think we're now in the 2000s in this era where we have solar and we have wind and we have all these renewables, and everyone is excited about having a cleaner planet. And they've come back to recognize that that nuclear from 50 years ago is not the nuclear of today.
Shut up, dude. Get out of your own way here. Like, nobody wants to hear about the climate change shit. Just bill it as a fucking great source of energy for your business. You want to build this country and build a like, you don't even have to say climate change. You want to have cleaner air and cleaner water. Like, we can do that.
Well, dude, no, if you talk to somebody who isn't paying attention, they think that we're fucked with climate change.
Oh, I know, but I don't care about them.
No, but
they're
that's who you
irrelevant.
have to get that's who you have to get to be like, okay, I'm on board with nuclear. It's
I
not me or
don't
you.
think so. I think all you really need is Elon and Vivek to cut the regulations and say, go for it.
Right, for 4 years.
Yeah.
And then for the next 4 years, the corporate media is just going to slam them about deregulation. They're going to just say, "Oh, this is the worst because Trump's in office. We can't get Vance reelected." And if they're able to pull off another fucking make Vance the boogeyman, all this progress is gone. So people have to be educated, and they have to understand that nuclear is actually really good.
Oh yeah.
And they're already sold on climate change. So instead of unselling them on climate change, be like, hey, this is the answer: tariffs and nuclear.
See, I look at it in a bit of a different way. So, like, we've got this electric bike, Starkvarg, that they put out this electric bike, and they're kind of doing the same thing. Oh, it's great for the climate, you know, but everybody who buys one has to take a gas-powered generator to the track with them to charge the fucking thing, and the generator is far more, you know, dirty than the bike that they're replacing. And like,
Yeah.
if you can get Hewlett Packard and IBM and, you know, Google and these big corporations on board, like, hey, you're going to be able to buy your own reactors, the lobbying will take care of it. Like, I don't think that I really think that these college students who are freaking out about climate change are irrelevant, because I don't think they're actually going to hold positions of power in this country at any point, because they're just worthless people. And like, they're going to fall into line no matter what. Like, as long as the right people are telling them what to do, they're just going to fall into line. So if it were me, I would not be going all in on climate, as this is a, you know, an answer for climate change.
I don't think it went all out. Went
No,
all in.
no,
He
you're
just
right.
like
He
tickled
didn't.
their itch a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So-
and maybe it is smart to kind of just do a short, you know.
Just this for everybody.
You're
If
right.
retarded. Here you go.
All right.
It's good for the climate, retard.
All right. I'm back on with you.
One question I have about this technology, which I didn't go and look at, I should have, but I got kind of busy today. They cool it with helium.
Yeah. Cool.
How much helium does it take to cool it? How much do we produce, and how much is that cheaper than, you know, whatever the alternative is?
I'm fairly sure that helium is easily produced and plentiful. I mean, if you can buy, you know, the balloon, you can buy cans of it for balloons, so it's not like it's going to
but
cost
you have a birthday
terribly
once
much.
a year. I'm not powering my home with it.
Yeah, and I think their main reason for using helium is because it's non-radioactive, and they get into it later on in here. So if there is
is
an
that in one of these clips?
yeah. So
Oh,
we'll
sorry, I
get
jumped the
no,
track
it's
on
all
that.
good. We'll get to it. I'm gonna bring in these other two clips real quick from a different guy who's also building a small reactor. Not quite as small. His is gonna be quite a bit bigger. It takes up some serious space, but still small in the like.
Relative.
It can be moved. It's
Yeah.
movable. It can be delivered with trucks. Like, it's not gonna take this crazy amount of shit to build it. So here we go.
Once again, I'll offer a bit of a heterodox thesis here. Like, the bad image of the nuclear industry came from the nuclear industry. So this China Syndrome was a movie that was all about fear of like a nuclear meltdown, and 3 Mile Island happened like right after that movie came out. And so people conflate those two events with the downfall of the nuclear industry. But the nuclear industry was dead before those came out. Like, before the movie came out, before the meltdown happened, the nuclear industry was already dead. We can look through the old contracts and show they were all canceled before that happened. So obviously it had nothing to do with the end of the industry. But what it did have to do with was the birth of a new industry, an industry that didn't sell nuclear reactors, but one that sold fear of nuclear reactors. So what the nuclear industry did after 3 Mile Island, looking around and saying, shoot, our old business was like totally gone before this. We need a new business. They looked around, saw people were afraid of nuclear, and instead of doing what a healthy industry does and help quell those fears, they leaned into them and they said, you're right, public. Nuclear accidents are the scariest thing. Now let us come in and sell upgrades to all of the existing nuclear plants in order to make them safe for you. And that's when nuclear safety culture began. And that's when this self-cannibalization, rent-seeking behavior really first ticked off, in terms of the nuclear industry repositioning themselves to say, trust us, nuclear energy is dangerous, and we're going to sell you safety systems to fix it. And that's what they've been doing for the last 40 years, scaring the shit out of everyone and making tons of money along the way, but making it very difficult to build new reactors.
Pretty interesting, huh? Like,
Yeah.
I should have prefaced that with like how he was talking about in the previous clip where he was saying, you know, these accidents kind of screwed everything. This guy is not on board with that. He's all about like, these reactors were fine and you people are fucking morons for doing what you did. Yeah, I should have looked this up. What is rent-seeking behavior?
I don't know.
I don't either. I should have looked that up, but you know, it seems like commie shit to me. Like, not necessarily like a function of communism, but something that like would be a critique of capitalism from a communist viewpoint. It just, for some reason, that rent-seeking thing just kind of strikes me as like the landlord argument from communism.
Rent-seeking behavior refers to activities aimed at investing or increasing one share of existing wealth without creating new wealth or value, which is exactly what they're doing.
Yep, that's a great.
Okay, we already have all
term.
this nuclear infrastructure. Let's double down and
Yeah, very interesting. So here he is
we
again.
didn't have like how much bigger could nuclear have been?
It was, dude, they were everywhere. Like, I've been to nuclear power plants before. My dad worked at one for a while. He said it was the coolest fucking thing he'd ever done until he became a lineman. He's working at this big nuclear plant. And like, dude, I've said this before. It's fancy steam engines is all they are. You get rocks that get hot on their own. You put them into water, and then you control them with another like graphite type of material, and you can speed up or heat up or cool down your reaction. You boil water, spin a turbine, and you got energy. And these rocks last for thousands of years. All of the your buddy who's running that, they're making that Yucca Valley this big massive storage place for nuclear waste, they call it. But nuclear waste is just fuel that we haven't been able to utilize yet.
Yeah.
So they're really like just shooting themselves in the foot and building these massive projects that don't need to happen.
Yep.
All right. Here's this next take.
Disagree with the underlying premise of your sentiment that there was something wrong with the old reactors. I actually think that we have totally misbranded the hazard around what is a nuclear meltdown altogether. Nuclear meltdowns do not hurt people. They are not catastrophes. Anyone who tells you otherwise has simply not looked at the data. We should first separate Chernobyl, which was actually not a nuclear meltdown. That was a nuclear explosion.
And a different kind of reactor too.
Yeah,
we said that was a what was it, a graphite reactor? That's a
Bomb.
completely different thing.
And it was a dual purpose. So that reactor was designed to make plutonium, to make bombs, to destroy America. Let's just remember that. And so the industrial accident that happened there was a bomb making factory. Okay. And that is a totally different type of reactor. Exactly. When there's a meltdown, it implies that it's like a water-based reactor, right? So the water boils off. Actually, the main nuclear reaction stops at that point, but there's still residual heat, and that residual heat starts melting the internal structures, including the fuel, and that is what creates the meltdown. Meltdowns don't hurt people. And we've got 4 examples of meltdowns in which there wasn't a single injury. 3 Mile Island, Fukushima 1, Fukushima 2, and Fukushima 3. These are gigawatt scale, so big old plants melt down and nobody gets hurt, despite in the Fukushima example of every single safety system failing. So it's not like, oh, thank God these magical safety systems helped us. Otherwise, it would have been a catastrophe. Every single safety system failed and still no one got hurt because a meltdown is not a hazardous event to begin with. And that is what everyone has wrong. So no, I'm not going to sit here and disparage the old nuclear industry and say, for technology purposes, and say my technology is better. I'm going to say it was never a problem to begin with. And our technology is able to bring an affordable nuclear power plant to market in today's era.
That's a pretty good take. I like that. Have you ever seen the show Chernobyl?
No.
So there's a great scene in it when the reactor blows and they're bringing out the head scientist, and he's in a helicopter with one of the military, the guy who's in charge or whatever. And they're flying over the reactor. And as you're looking down, you see this massive glowing fire and steam everywhere. So what happened in that reaction is it boiled off. All the water turned to steam. It was all radioactive. And then you got this massive graphite fire that blew everything up. And one of the best parts in that show was after they get down off the helicopter, they're kind of talking about something and nobody really understands what's going on except for the scientist. And they say something about safety. We need to make sure that everybody's safe. And he's like, you don't get it, do you? Do you see what we just flew over? We're all dead already. We're dead. There is nothing you can do. So get back to work and make sure that this thing doesn't get any worse. And everybody's just kind of like, fuck, we're dead? No way, we feel fine. But yeah, that's it. And like he said, it was a bomb factory. This was not, they were not producing energy for anybody. They were making bombs. Right. That's it. So that was one of my favorite interviews that I've listened to in a long time, because the guy had it wrong. The guy interviewing, conducting the interview, he was on board with all these old reactors were bad, but we've got these new ones now that are so great. And the guy's just like, no, man, these guys in the 1950s were badasses. They knew what they were doing. And like he said, like their whole game was let's, sell all these safety features now to make everything safer. And then all of them failed and still nobody got hurt. And like they still bitch about Fukushima, but you can eat fish out of the water right there. Elon did it a couple
went,
years ago.
right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, he gets it,
Yeah.
that there is no reason that he should not have a nuclear reactor powering his Tesla factories.
Yeah. Well, he's in the solar business, so that might have something to do with it.
Yeah, but I mean, where his factories are located are not going to be good for solar. You're going to have to run your own transmission lines. Yeah,
South Texas.
yeah, but he's not out in the middle of nowhere. If you're going to have, like we saw, just for a 4 megawatt plant, you're going to have 70 to 100 acres. And if you're in downtown Texas somewhere, you're out of the. So now you're going to have to build this solar plant and then pay for the 3 million miles or $3 million a mile of transmission lines to get it to your factory, where you could just buy one of these reactors that this company is selling costs less than $100 million.
Wow.
So you're so far in the clear compared to building your own solar farm that it's just not even close. And now you can have your factory wherever you want. It doesn't have to be in the desert. It doesn't have to be on top of a mountain where there's wind. You can put it wherever the fuck you want.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I like the term rent-seeking behavior. I'm going to use that.
I am too. I knew there was something about it. As soon as I heard it, I was like, I should have looked that up because I forgot. I heard it earlier today and I was like, I need to look that up. And then I forgot. I could have tried to come up with something, but it wouldn't have been good. I got one more clip here and then we'll finish up.
Typically when they're thermal, so that's when they're in the slower energy range. So you want something that scatters neutrons well, but doesn't absorb them, something like carbon or water. And then when you want to make it actually practical, you need something to cool the reactor because you make a lot of heat. You need to get that heat out of there and move it to like a turbine eventually. A lot of big reactors will just use water for this as well, but we use helium. Helium doesn't become radioactive on its own. It has very little of a neutron cross-section, so neutrons don't interact with the helium at all. That's nice because there is, a hypothetical situation where you have an accident and you release your coolant to the atmosphere. If that happens to us, we're not releasing anything that's radioactive.
So I think it's just a safety feature is probably why they're doing it. I would imagine it would be much easier with water, but...
no, if you're putting it next to McDonald's.
Yeah, you want it safe.
Where are you going to get that water? And how are you going to process all that? I worked on a project where I had to live in Toledo for a while, and the dude had a boat, and we drove by this nuclear factory, and you could feel the difference in the water. And that's in like Lake Erie, I think.
What do you mean?
Imagine, huh?
What do you mean you could feel the difference?
So the water goes into the lake. So it's just cooling. Like
the heat. I get what you're saying.
So
I get what you're saying.
You could in September or October, you could go swimming when the leaves are changing, everything's real cold. You could go hop in and have a cozy dip because of the water from the nuclear factory.
Yeah, no, there's
do that at McDonald's downtown Boise.
Yeah, there's nuclear power plants on the water in California, and I don't know which one it is, but one of them they get rid of their hot water and pull in cooler water, and they have all this marine life gathered around it, and like seals and otters and all kinds of shit gather around because it's warm water and they like it.
Cozy.
Yeah. That was one of the coolest things that Trump was talking about on Joe Rogan, where he was talking about like the water issues in California. And he's like, we've got all these spots with all these minerals. We need to mine that shit. And Joe's like, well, you want to protect the environment and, ecosystems. He's like, yeah, and no, we'll make a lake when it's done. It'll be better. And I was like, yeah, why not? Like if you've got this big, hunk of rock that we could use somewhere, and all we need to do is just make a pit and fill it with water and have a nice, beautiful ecosystem again. Like, I don't care about some stupid fucking dragonfly. Like, whatever. It can adapt or it can die. Like, we have needs on this planet, and if we can make an area better for a lot of people and a lot of animals and worse for a couple of dragonflies, go for it. I don't care.
Dude, if we replace pigeons with drones, we can replace dragonflies with drones.
So you wanted to talk about the business of UFC. So I looked into this a little bit, but I want to hear yours. So I I thought they did make money off of pay-per-view, and I looked up in a couple of articles that said they made like $1.3 billion last year, and they all kind of said that they made money on pay-per-view, but it wasn't clear. Like, it
All right.
was
So
ambiguous.
years, not that many years before the pandemic, uh, William Morris Endeavors, which is the biggest talent agency in the world, and went to Silver Lake, which is a big private equity company, and offered to buy the UFC. The only way that Silver Lake would finance it is if the UFC had guaranteed recurring income. So it couldn't be like, oh, UFC 101 did really good, but 103 sucked.
Mhm.
No, they had to have a fixed amount of income every year. So UFC sold their rights to Disney, ESPN, for a flat amount. And then UFC had a certain number of shows that they'd do each year. And that's why they were the first back during the pandemic. That's why they did the Fight Island and did the Performance Institute fights, because they were contractually obligated to the people that loaned William Morris the money to put on that number, to have the contract with ESPN. ESPN contract goes bad, loan defaults, and then the private equity company owns the UFC. So they have absolutely no stake in how well the pay-per-views do. Obviously, the more it is, the better. Somehow the fighters sometimes get paid a percentage, which I think is in their contract. But that's why fight nights got so good. Before fight nights were like, oh, fight night Louisville, this
Yeah.
shit's not big enough for real TV. And then it's just like banger card, banger card, banger card, and it's not a pay-per-view. It's because it didn't matter, if you were a main event on the fight night or you were the main event on the pay-per-view.
Their fighters
UFC
got
the
so
same
much
money.
better over the years.
Yeah.
Is what I would attribute that to, because in the beginning there wasn't enough good fighters to sell that Wednesday night fight or something like that. But now their roster is so fucking deep.
And they don't have, it's not a gamble for the UFC to put somebody in a main event if they don't do well, because they were only doing a main event or a numbered UFC every couple months. So they had to have somebody huge. Now they could take somebody that they know is great, put on a great fight and a great card, and it doesn't matter because they don't have to sell pay-per-views. So now fighters are coming up and getting bigger because they're able to fight more often, they're getting more visibility and that sort of thing. And that's why I'm hopeful for the Netflix thing. So that's how this conversation started.
Yeah.
These people read our text messages.
Yeah, it started because I don't watch UFC anymore because I don't want to have one foot in and one foot out. Like for a while, I was ordering all the pay-per-views and watching everything, and you're in it, exactly what's going on. But then I stopped watching the pay-per-views because it just got too expensive for me. And then
whoever's at home listening to this that pirates it, definitely don't send him the link.
Yeah, please.
Don't do that.
Please
Those
don't do
are
that.
illegal.
Because, dude, even when I go on to, YouTube after the fights are over, it's always, weird camera angles and the sound's not right and they're cutting at weird spots. And it's like, just fucking rip it off the TV and put it on there normal. I don't know what the fucking problem is.
Yeah, no, they're sitting there like Michael J. Fox shot it on his iPhone.
So anyways, the thought was hopefully it goes to Netflix so we don't have to deal with that shit.
And it's promising. So they did the Joe Rogan live, Dave Chappelle or Chris Rock live. Then they did Tyson Paul live. They had problems.
Which I couldn't watch.
Yeah, it just froze on Tyson's ass.
It wouldn't even open for me. Netflix would open and then I'd click on it and then it'd just be a black screen.
Yeah. Then Netflix told me I had a problem with my fucking internet connection.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, you haven't check your internet. Yeah, fuck you.
No, homie. But so that one wasn't the best, but they're gonna do. So they had Jerry Jones there at the Tyson thing, hyping up the NFL being on Netflix, and then after the first of the year, WWF is there, which is really interesting, or WWE, whatever. I'm aging myself.
Me too. I know it is WWF also.
Because William Morris, who owned the UFC and owned WWE, merged the two of them and took them public. Now they're their own entity. They're not just owned by William Morris anymore. I'm sure William Morris still has a large stake, but they're a publicly traded company. But the fact that WWE is going to do WrestleMania in January on Netflix is really makes me hopeful that it's going to save me like $1,200 a year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
If you're into that
the
shit.
first Disney contract with UFC was only 400 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but how much does it cost them to make a show?
A lot.
A lot.
A lot. A whole lot.
And then so you can have this live content 50 times a year for
Wow.
Like,
Netflix is
what-
worth a lot more money than I thought they were.
they still might be losing money.
They're approximately 370 billion. So 1.3 billion is not as big a deal as I thought it was, if that's how much money they're working with. Because when I was thinking about it, I was like, Netflix is probably worth 20 billion, and a $1 billion deal is not fucking great for somebody like that. And it would be, you would need, I don't know. I wonder how many subscriptions they
2024,
have.
they're going to spend 17 billion on content.
Wow.
Dude, they're paying $100 million a year for Friends.
Wow. Okay, I'm looking up some numbers here real quick. How many subscribers do they have? So it would take 186 million basic subscribers or 65 million premium subscribers to make up that $1.3 billion. That's a lot.
In a month.
And they've got around 238 million subscribers. So they would almost have to double their subscriber in order to, be able to pay for the UFC. I don't know. I don't see it happening anytime soon. I think that pay-per-view money is pretty fucking big. Whoever's collecting it,
They'd have to add 7 million subscribers to break even on it annually.
7 million? See,
Yeah, no, that you have to break it up by 12 months.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right.
And who knows if UFC even does 1.3 billion in revenue.
Well, that's a good point. Like the articles that I read said that they did, but none of them really had any hard numbers that they could link to. It was just reports.
Like
People familiar with the situation.
A really big UFC is like 1 million pay-per-view buys.
Yeah, I could see that.
And they do, and it's $80, but the carriers take half of it. So there's 40. So that's 40 million a month. That's only $480 million a year. If they did 1 million pay-per-view buys each time.
I don't know why they don't do their own apps.
They tried. There's a UFC app.
It just seems like with that much money flowing around that it would be pretty easy to hire somebody to build an app, and you could outsource, get rid of that, 50% that you've got to give to the carrier.
Well, what happened, the reason why ESPN was really good for UFC is the distribution of the fight nights.
Uh-huh.
So the sport's just bigger than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And then if you take away the $80 pay-per-view barrier, it could be the biggest sport
It would be
ever.
massive. I love watching UFC. I just can't do, what is it, $160 a month? Because they do 2 pay-per-views a month now, I think.
Well, 1 to 2.
Yeah. It's just...
It would be absolutely awful if you guys sent the links when they happened.
I know. It would be horrible. It would be horrible. Definitely don't put it in a comment.
Definitely don't put it in the comment.
Definitely don't send it to toohardfortheradiopod@gmail.com.
Yeah, don't do that.
Oh, shit, man.
Oh, buddy, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you too. You got anything good planned?
Yeah, there's this Cajun place around the corner from our house that does boiled the deep fried birds.
Oh, cool.
So we'll do that for lunch, and then my buddy who I talked about last time and he's waiting for the ADA ramps at his restaurant. We're gonna do Thanksgiving dinner there. That's why I was running a little late.
I know.
His girlfriend and my wife are good friends now, and she's like, I need help decorating. And we went and because it was it's like a mostly put together bar restaurant.
Yeah.
But it definitely wasn't ready for Thanksgiving. So we went and set up candles and cinnamon smelling pine cones and shit like that.
Nice. I've worked so many Thanksgivings in restaurants. I've worked Christmases. The last restaurant that I worked in, it was a bar, and it was like a bar restaurant, sports bar, and we had an arcade in it, and we were on Pier 39 in San Francisco. And like we were the only bar that opened on Christmas in Pier 39 in San Francisco. And like I had to work every year. And finally I was like bitching. I worked the last 3. I need this one off. Like I got, you know, family and shit. Like I've put in my dues. It's time for somebody else to bartend on Christmas. And so he's trying to find somebody else to bartend. And finally one of the waitresses was like, why don't you stop being such a fucking tight ass and just close? And he was like, you know what? We're closed. Have a nice Christmas. And I was like, thank you. Like, it's not that hard, right? Like, we only made like 12 grand last Christmas, so it's not like it's a make or break for us. So it was nice. It's always funny to see like a business owner go, huh, I could stay home for 12 grand.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't about us, clearly.
Definitely wasn't about you guys.
Right on, man. Well, have a good Thanksgiving. We'll do this again hopefully next week.
Yep.